3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Triad of the Forest podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is season 1, episode 8, Political Intrigues. Ooh. So, what do you want to get started with?
Well, before we get into anything, there's a couple of things that we need to get out of the way. First is we need to get up to date with you and see how you're doing on your Clone Wars. I was almost going to say rewatch because at this point I feel like
No.
everyone's doing a rewatch, but for you it's just a regular watch.
The regular first watch ever. Yes, that is
which
correct.
which could be the best watch.
It is. I wish I could see all of these things for the first time, honestly.
Well, first of all, I need a clarification because my husband was actually pissed. I didn't mention him in the thank you when I thanked everybody for trying to push me to watch the show. Yeah. I apologized to the audience and to you guys, and he was like, "You should have apologized to me. I'm the one that's been trying to get you to do this for years. I deserve a nod." So thank you, my husband, for all these years of patience and now watching it again with me. Except you won't shut up and keep having to pause it because you're telling me things that haven't happened
yet. It happens. He's just too excited.
Yeah, he gets really excited. And then he's like, side note, they don't show this here, but blah, blah, blah. And I was like, are you going to let me get through an episode?
And the answer is yes, but no, but kind of.
Yeah.
But let me keep explaining.
But anyway, whatever. It's fun. I'm actually I'm more than halfway through season 3.
Wait, so
I'm right before the Mortis arc.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay. I wanted to leave that one because I know that one's deep, and I wanted to read through that one.
You wanted to just be ready.
Maybe next episode should be Mortis.
And we just go into the Mortis arc because it's very important.
You watch it for the first time, Mo and I rewatch it, and then we just.
I agree. Yes.
I'm good with that.
Although it's gonna be complicated because we also have the Mandalorian, but I'm sure we can squeeze some time.
We can figure something out, I'm sure. But yeah, there was a lot of
miniseries.
Exactly. Yes.
But there actually was a lot of really good political themes in those episodes from season 3 that I've watched so far. So it was pretty cool to watch those coming into this and thinking about all how Star Wars can get very political. So that was cool to watch, and they did.
Is that how you came up with the topic?
No, I thought about it just because the elections are coming up, and I think we are in a very tense political climate right now, and considering that the films considering that the films are very political in nature as well, I thought it was something that was worthy of discussion. That's how I came up with the topic.
But I think piggybacking what you were saying about Clone Wars and politics, I think that Clone Wars actually deals with politics in a better way than the films do, particularly the prequels, obviously, because they do go into the politics side, but they don't do it in we're just going to talk about parliamentary procedure. And just look at people in the Senate talk about things no, it's politics and action and consequences of those actions, which actually make it way more engaging, way more interesting.
Yeah, and you see the motivations more, and you actually get to see, from the separatist side of things too, not just your main bad guys, but actual systems that consider themselves separatists, but they think they're the good guys. Everything is a
Heroes
point of view.
Both sides, yeah.
So it's good to see, positive characters from the side of the separatists as well, and then you see a lot of and you see a lot of negative characters from the Republic side as well. So it's very hard to decide who's really in the right during this.
I think why Clone Wars succeeds politically, it's because it's also showing it's a lot of international politics as well, in this case intergalactic politics. It's fun.
Yes.
Because that's the challenge. How do you deal with the diversity and the plethora that exists in a galaxy far, far away?
Yeah.
With a government, a system that works. So you see that skirmish of the gray, how the politics is really working on the ground versus this what we envision or say the law's gonna be this, but how is that? What are the consequences of those laws? What are and I think that's where Clone Wars kind of succeeds, is in seeing how because you understand the separatists. You can see how certain politics that the Republic were placing were actually affecting the livelihood of other people. Obviously, that gets capitalized by Palpatine, who capitalized on everybody.
Yeah,
Obviously.
well,
But
but I think that's the point, which kind of extends to what Nani was saying about like you can't really sympathize with either side, but it's because both sides are under the shroud of the dark side. Because
Yeah.
Palpatine is playing both sides, so he's
Yeah.
right,
corrupting
right,
the virtues of both sides.
there is no right side, and I guess that kind of like segs into like the politics we see in like uh, the prequel trilogy,
Yeah.
Mhm.
where it came out like in 1999.
1999.
So it's almost like that fresh set of eyes to the politics of the 90s. You just the the Soviet Union just fell down. You now all of a sudden had a quote unquote, oh, this is the republic way, this is the democracy. The US won. So you have that integration of like, oh,
Mhm.
now everybody has to band with the new republic. Everybody has to band with the republic because there is no other side. And you just see that like exchange of like, oh, let's everything is okay on the outside in the republic. It's a lot of uh, I like it's almost like an international politics dance. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'll give you this if you give me this. There's a lot of quid pro quo. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
but there's also a lot of like backstabbing and manipulation and
Yeah.
everything that we've seen as reflected in our government systems. So
I mean, I think it's interesting how you framed it that way because I hadn't really thought about it because I think it's common knowledge at this point that George Lucas was definitely making a very outward statement about the state of U.S. politics with the prequels, obviously the original trilogy, but the prequels, and then by you mentioning that about the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Soviet Union and all that stuff, and like that's the kind of high point of U.S. politics because it's peace, it's a good time, the economy's doing good, and everything. Like Episode One really fell kind of perfectly, and the whole trilogy kind of like serendipitously fell in a very good place to be like a reflection of the times because Episode One definitely reflected that. It's just like you see that everything's great in the Republic because there hasn't been any war, everything's fantastic, but like there's still like that seed of corruption underneath, and that like things on the surface look really well, but
Yeah.
like underneath everything's kind of falling apart.
yeah,
And like obviously George Lucas didn't expect 9/11 to happen, but like then 9/11 happened, and then we get Attack of the
Yeah.
Clones, and then like the parallels become even more impressive. It's like that's why like I think even though we have our gripes and we've talked about them in previous videos about how the prequels were executed in terms of like themes and
Yeah.
concepts, like everything's there. It's like it's so masterfully done that I think like there's a lot of space to like to keep dissecting these things. So I think that was a very
oh,
interesting
absolutely.
framing point because I hadn't really thought about it that way until you just presented it. That was
Yeah, so it's almost
Mobius
it's the
strip. Rough cut.
backdrop. Let's let so that backdrop then leads to what you were saying, that prosperity, that time off. But it's a prosperity based on, it's a very, if somebody's winning, that means somebody has to lose.
Hmm.
And in a certain way, the separatists, not the manipulated ones, but you can see that a little bit way with like Latin American countries. You can see that seed of becoming a separatist because you all of a sudden then have just this, oh, I'm coming and this is the way of life you have to follow. This is exactly like, it denies a whole past, it denies a history, it denies their own political advancements and their own political. So it's like it transcends just U.S. politics. It really goes deep into, uh, like it's in, like I kind of like I think that's kind of like the redeeming qualities for me for the prequels is the politics. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But
No, I thought to piggyback on that, I think it's actually really cool too, because if you look at how the separatists are framed versus how the Republic is framed, yeah, the Republic in Star Wars has like all the different worlds and all the different like aliens and species that are there. But like in terms of the conflict, the way it's framed is usually around humans and like very homogeneous group, right? But then you look at the separatists and it's a diverse group of different races and different aliens and different worlds that kind of come together. So like you see that kind of what you were talking about, like
Mm-hmm.
how it kind of reflects with like US politics in one way of how it kind of antagonizes or is disparate to like other cultures or political movements that aren't like like themselves. It's kind of reflected in that way, and like they're fighting in the films. The separatists are kind of fighting against that system to like regain their individuality. And what happens when the Republic wins is kind of like this whole whitewashing, so to speak, of the Republic. There's no more. I mean, who's in command in the Empire? It's humans,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone
yep,
else is sidelined.
Yep.
So it's very reflective to like especially I mean, I guess back in the early 2000s, you could see it in a way with the Iraq War and and the war against terror and everything. But like, especially now in
Yeah.
the era of Trump, that's the prequels are even more
Yep.
representative, I think, of like those
Mm-hmm.
politics that were being discussed with the
Mm-hmm.
world we're currently living in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yep.
Where everybody who's different gets ostracized and marginalized and oppressed.
With the
And
promise that they won't.
Well, I know, but that's you watch it now and you realize, I mean, the actual separatists, not Count Dooku or whoever who were directly working for Palpatine, but the planetary systems that separated because they found the Republic to be too corrupt. They were right. The Republic was
Correct.
completely corrupt. They had a Sith Lord as the leader of it, and the only way that he can manipulate events the way it was is because the corruption was already so deep seated that he was able to pull this off. And then
yep,
after everything happens, I mean, the Republic becomes the Galactic Empire.
I mean, it's kind of like not
So,
to. I mean, and because it's the political episode, I guess I will get political. So if we
yeah,
do scholars,
get
I'm sorry,
political. Let's go.
but
That's the
that,
point.
that, that's
Yeah.
that's why we're here.
it's very analogous to like Palpatine and Mitch McConnell. It's like the creepy old guy in the Senate pulling the strings, using parliamentary procedure to get his way. This
Mm-hmm.
is like it's
That's
like now, like
exactly.
obviously when you're seeing it as a kid, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh my god, this is so fucking boring. But now when you see it, it's just like, oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
it's like why didn't I listen to like Star Wars? Obviously, like the people that say like, oh, the SJW agenda and Star Wars, the liberal thing, it's just like, yeah, bro, it was there from the beginning. George
Yeah.
Lucas from day one with A New Hope, he was doing the SJW liberal agenda. Like so, it's like the everything was there, and like he's even said it in quotes. Actually, I thought it was interesting, and I saved it off because I saw there was a. Let me look it up here on my phone. Phil Sostak, who's like one of the writers, does the art of books for Star Wars. He always does some like really cool Twitter posts, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it was yesterday he posted like a tweet where he was quoting George Lucas saying like a quote from George Bush that said, "You're either with us or you're either with us or against us in the fight against terror." George Bush said that in November 2001, and then he quotes Anakin, "If you're not with me, you're my enemy." And he said that
Yeah.
in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And then and then George Lucas is quoted as saying, "George Bush is Darth Vader, and Cheney is the Emperor." I mean, he goes off like in the rest of the thread to like keep going with what George Lucas was talking about and whatnot. But when I read that, I'm like, oh my god, see, it's just like yeah, there's it's not something that you really have to dig that hard to
To see
figure
it.
out what the agenda of
Mm-hmm.
That George Lucas had with these movies was because it's very very clear.
Yeah. But like you were
Which
saying, even though it had nothing to do, I mean, nobody knew what it was, how the world was going to turn out, that we were going to have Trump as a president. But it is even more prevalent now, because what he has used to divide the country is this, message of hate instead of hope, and separation instead of unity, and war instead of peace between, the country itself.
Mhm.
So I think it's a message that is very close to like what Palpatine was getting at.
Which
So
is interesting because I mean, not to go to the sequel trilogy too fast.
Uh-huh.
We're still like on the prequels, but like
Or
at
maybe
first,
we can just intermingle them.
well, no, I mean, I think it's important to like tackle
Yeah,
them
yeah,
individually
Yeah.
because they each tackle things like very differently. But in the sequels, it was interesting because originally I thought that they didn't have any like overtly analogous political agenda with
Hmm.
like the contemporary politics that we're going through today. But now that you mentioned that, Nani, with like the Trump rhetoric, it is
Hmm.
very sequel trilogy esque because
yeah,
where Palpatine was very divisive
Hmm.
in action with the
Hmm.
prequels, he was still conciliatory in his rhetoric. In the
Yeah. Well,
Senate,
he
it
had
was
to
all
get
about
power first.
well, exactly. No,
He
but
had to get that power first.
that's the point. But like in the sequel, but like he still had that speech, right? In the Senate of like bringing people together and
Yeah.
prosperity for the empire, and like
Hmm.
all these things. So he's still like, even though his actions don't speak to it, he still
Hmm.
has like, he still puts the face on of like wanting the best for the people. But in the sequel trilogy, like Snoke and General Hux and Kylo Ren, when they speak or do their speeches or are in public or private talking about what they want for the First Order or anything, it's very, very, fascist. And there's a
Yeah.
link to like a Lindsay Ellis video that I'm gonna put like in the description for our YouTube video that kind of talks about like the ideology of the First Order, but it's very
Hmm.
reminiscent to that. It's like very unapologetic, and like there's no qualms about like sugarcoating what they're for. It's just like, yeah, we're just here for this power and like this rhetoric, and if you don't like it, then get off the bus. You're
Yeah.
not with us,
Yeah.
which is even more scary now that I think about it.
Yeah. When they stopped even trying to sugarcoat it and people are still for it,
That's
that's
why I thought
terrifying.
I saw Borat, the new Borat film over the weekend.
I
Oh
haven't seen
god,
it. No.
it's
I
so.
haven't. I
I mean,
haven't seen it.
if you didn't like the first one, you're not gonna like the second one. If you
Uh-huh.
like the first one, you will like the second one. But it was one of those interesting things about that movie, and it's something that Sacha Baron Cohen was also saying. It's like 14 years ago, 15 years ago, i.e., the time frame of the prequels.
Yeah.
Like people might have been thinking the things that they're thinking about now, but they were in the closet, so to speak, with
Yeah.
their racism
Hmm.
or prejudices and whatnot. And like he had to kind of dig deep to kind of get them to admit those things. But now it's just all out in the open.
And it's just rampant now
Yeah.
because the president actually, wants people to be hateful. And so the
Yeah.
people that have been harboring hate, maybe for completely incorrect reasons, or maybe not directed at the people that they're actually hating on right now it's okay to hate because the president tells you to hate. I don't know.
But
It's very bad.
but are the sequel? I mean, I don't know if we want to go to the sequels now, but are the sequels like intentionally making a statement about our current political environment in the same way that the prequels and the originals were? Because I don't think they were necessarily.
But I think they weren't as overtly as the prequel trilogy, but it was more. It was just pretty much like the backdrop.
Mhm.
You and like when you guys were talking, like something popped into my
Linked.
head. Yeah, something linked with. And I want to compare the stormtrooper, like the armies between the sequels and the prequels. In the prequel theory, you have an army that's just pretty much the same everybody. It's a clone.
Hmm.
It's what's valued in that society. You have to be a cookie cutter. Like everybody had to follow, you know, your parameter of what's acceptable is within this time frame. If you are above or below that, that's you're out. On the sequels, you have you have two types of armies. You have the ones that have been brainwashed, which in a way represents. I mean, I guess we can't straight away, but it represents those who follow people just blindly.
Mhm.
And I think that was like why it was key to have Finn break away from that brainwashing.
Hmm.
And
And that's
then
why we
on
needed the
this,
Stormtrooper Rebellion.
yes, but also
Just
on
saying.
the on the other side, you also had an army, the Resistance, who even though it was completely diverse, you can see it at the end of the battles with like every ship was different, everything is embraced. But before that, you also they were also like scattered. They were afraid to. They didn't even respond to
Yeah.
Leia's call. What like it also critiques like how reliable are just this just pop up movements in a way. Like, are they gonna be long lasting? Are they gonna get together and cohese? So because right now, like that's how politics is happening in our modern day. It's not as much as, oh, we're following a war, we're following uh, a certain political events that are happening around the globe. Now we're just following what's happening within us, what's popping up, what's so in a way I see it that is it's really political in that sense.
But I think
It's
I think it's interesting that you mentioned the clones though, because like the Clone Wars show like makes a point to like say that even though they're a template, right, and they're all clones of Jango
Mhm.
Fett, they're all supposed to be a mold and be the same. They're still people with
yeah,
identities, and they all have some individuality in them. And the only way to that the Emperor could actually control them was with the ship,
Yeah.
because if they
right.
didn't have the ship, spoiler alert, and you should know by now.
I know that's how it works, but I know what you're getting at, and I love it because you see them like drawing on their uniforms that you never see that with
Yes.
the older generation of stormtroopers.
Yeah.
The
Well,
older
technically new ones.
stormtroopers are numbers.
Yeah.
The other ones are
Yeah.
numbers the whole time. The clones actually start naming themselves as well. And
Yeah.
you see that they have like different haircuts and different hair colors, and they try to like become independent. And you see that they're very valued by their Jedi leaders as well. Like you see
Yeah. Yeah.
a bond between them
Yeah.
that is so strong, which makes obviously Order 66 that much more terrifying because I mean they're just shot. They're forced to kill, their leaders, stabbing
Well,
them in the
so
back. I mean,
to
could
some
you
of them they're
imagine being
friends.
ugh,
Yeah.
can you imagine being
Like
one of those general leaders in the middle of a battle and suddenly your own troopers that have been with you for
Yes,
years start
like
shooting you in the back?
Kiadi Mundi in Revenge of the Sith, his face is just like, oh, what the fuck. No, but I think that's the
and
interesting thing of contrasting the stormtrooper with the clone trooper, because the
Yeah,
clone trooper was supposed to be like Mo was saying, like, oh,
yeah,
this one thing that's the same, that's unthinking and like ultimately loyal, and then like the stormtrooper that even though it's like this diverse group of people that are individuals,
yeah,
they're still beaten down to like conform,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is an interesting dichotomy
yeah,
with the clone
yeah,
trooper.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
why Finn is that important, because he was able to
Hmm.
break away from like that
Yeah.
type of
Yeah, because
upbringing.
it's kind of pathetic that I mean the brainwashing was more effective into making them one
Exactly.
single-minded
Yes.
machine than the fact that they were actually genetically cloned from one person.
Yes. Yes. And that's what,
yeah.
to tie it back to the
Yeah.
politics, that's
Hmm.
what we see, like
Yeah.
when
Because
what's
now there's a
happening.
lot of it's happening. A lot of brainwashing.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's a lot of brainwashing with a lot of misinformation.
Hmm.
That's
Mm.
that's that's the scary part
Hmm.
because you can't tell what's true or what's fake anymore.
I know.
Yeah,
And
everything's
and
fake news.
every and that is, I mean, it's a really horrible burden on communications as we have it right now because as a species we're social beings. We're hardwired to, even though we mistrust, if
Mm.
we're also hardwired to trust speech.
Yeah.
Like you usually don't question someone's authority, if that's how it gets advantage taken off. Like that's how
Hmm.
you get narcissistic psychopaths on the president being president. Like that's because you can feed on that very and it's not a bad thing because it's we all have it. It's a very instinctual
It's evolutionary.
aspect of
That's
it.
why
It is an
that's
evolutionary,
why
yeah.
children are
It,
predisposed to like obey parents, because like some form of authority is necessary for us to survive as a species.
but in a way, our brains react to it.
Mhm.
It's just that if we don't have the opportunity to like educate ourselves, if we don't have the opportunity to grow, if we don't have the opportunity to actually be like the clones, find their own individuality,
Hmm.
Mhm, mhm.
then you just you breathe that hatred into yourself, which just gets a scapegoat, gets an outlet, and then you have this person that preys on that instinctual like instinct we all have
The need
without
for authority.
the
Yeah.
need for authority. Like it's just and you, in a way you also like you can see it in Kylo Ren. You like at times you see he's very childish on his
Yeah.
reactions,
Mm-hmm.
like all throughout. Like maybe Rice, like, but it's even you can see remnants of that, like childish person. Like I just want to be an authority in a place of authority because I'm special.
Well,
Like,
that's what's interesting. I wish I had sent you guys the video before. It's called "The Ideology of the First Order" by Lindsay Ellis, and that's one of the things that she kind of discusses in that video, which is like there is really no distinct ideology for the First Order slash Kylo Ren in the sequel trilogy. One of the things he was talking about is like how like uh, Kylo Ren responds to like the like what she calls well not she but like the fascist, which is from an essay from Umberto Eco, like this Italian philosopher and whatnot. It kind of lists the things that like make up fascism, and like it's not like a distinct ideology of things that he holds dear, but it's like a not an ethos either. It's like more of a way of being of behaviors that like give him that personality. And one of those things are like the machismo, right? And like the feeling of power over others. And like that's technically what Kylo Ren is representing, right? He's not really in favor of like controlling the galaxy or not. He's just there to be the supreme leader or be in charge or like reject the other thing, the other. You know, he's rejecting Leia, he's rejecting Han, he's rejecting Luke. He's not really having a philosophy for himself. He's just contradicting everything that came before him.
well, isn't that what Trump is?
Actually, no. I think actually I don't actually. And I wouldn't really put Trump in any bubble because I think Trump is so self-serving that I don't think he has any deep-rooted philosophy for himself. I
Yeah.
just think he's in it to win it for himself, and he'll just do what he needs to do and align himself with who he needs to just do what he wants to do. So I don't think he has a philosophy or he's reacting against something. I think it's just pure narcissism, and this is, you know, my.
Oh no, yeah, no, no. I meant to the part of like, oh, I just want to be supreme leader, just because it sounds like a nice title to have.
Oh yeah, well yeah. In that case, then yes. And he throws hissy fits like
Yeah.
Kylo did in the Force Awakens. So yes, yes.
I mean,
Then in that case, yes.
the president of the United States basically runs the country through Twitter. I mean, can we talk about the problem with communication right now? I mean, news medias have lost all credibility completely. I mean, it wasn't like back in the day, back to what you were talking about, Mo, that I mean, you used to believe it. You used to believe in the newspapers. You used to believe in the news because they were vetted. Like they did the research, they had sources, they actually cared about having sources. I mean, watch if you haven't watched the series The Newsroom from HBO, please do. It's
I have, but
Okay.
it feels too preachy for me sometimes. So it's just like,
it's so
okay, I
good
get it,
though.
Aaron Sorkin, I get it.
I know, but still, it's something about the integrity of the news that doesn't exist anymore. So even now, when things are really happening, people don't believe it. I mean, this whole thing with COVID right now, the president says it's fake. Well, a lot of people believe it's fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though
And
he got
people
it,
are
he got it.
and then people are dying by the hundreds of thousands, and people still think it's fake. I mean, this
It's
the way he took the reins of the media to take control of it and say the story that he wants, and then he can say something's fake and say something's real whenever it conveniences him because people have stopped believing in the media.
Yeah.
So
But in that sense, that's kind of one of those issues. I mean, it's a little non sequitur what I'm going at. But I mean, I agree with you. But like that kind of gets me to thinking. Since we were talking about prequels and sequels, we haven't talked about the original trilogy, so we obviously get there. But since we're on the sequels, that's something that kind of like upset me in the sense of like I felt like sequel trilogy needed a little bit more of a framing device to like understand what the state of the galaxy is, because
Yeah.
in the original trilogy we understood like we got
Yeah.
like these like space Nazis, and we got a band of rebels that are trying to restore justice and equality, right? And in the prequels we see like there's this good republic, it's doing well, but then these guys are trying to fuck with it, so we gotta figure this shit out. But then in the sequel trilogy, especially coming off of the original trilogy, where we see like that a balance was restored and the empire was defeated, even though
destroyed. Yep.
not completely, but like we're getting there. We kind of expected to see these things, and I'm not saying we needed like parliamentary procedure in the Senate. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we didn't get to see like what the heroes are fighting for in a way, because it's like we just see empire was defeated and now we're just fighting the first order. This is like, wait, what?
And it's like, how was the first order established? How did they get such a hold so fast? Why were the rebels not able to do more with their win?
What happened? Why was the New Republic unsuccessful in maintaining like power? So I felt like
and then they destroyed the New Republic in one shot. They destroyed the entire New Republic in one shot. I mean, I think that's essentially the problem with the new trilogy, is that it didn't know where it wanted to go. It didn't know where it was going. So you don't even really have a framework of this is the start, this is the middle, this is the end. I mean, politically, aside from everything else, but politically, you really have no idea what's going on.
Especially with the end. The end is even worse, because the end is like, okay, we started. Okay, I'll forgive them a little bit at the beginning because it's such a rehash of A New Hope that rebels against the Empire, even though they have different names now. But the end is even worse, because the end is just like, wait, now you got the Sith Eternal, and then the First Order, and then there's no Republic, and then there's the Resistance, and then we actually are finishing the saga. So, and I'm not saying that like in terms of a hero's journey you need to have a political structure, but like this is a fleshed out universe that we have. We need to have like some end point where things are at.
And now basically all the leaders are dead too.
Well, I get it. It's the new blood that's taking the mantle. I get it. The ways of the old generation didn't work. I get all those allegories, but still, it's like something. Hey, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I still felt that we needed something to like establish that the galaxy is in a better place because this is what's happening.
Yeah, considering especially it's the end of the saga.
Exactly. Well, we'll see in 10 years.
I know they're gonna do something else again, but this is the end of the Skywalker saga.
For now, yes.
For the moment.
Yeah, until they make some random kid a random Skywalker that nobody knew about.
I'll be
Broom Boy. I read some bullshit. Article online.
No, don't make him a Skywalker.
I read a bullshit article online from this clickbaity site saying like, theory, Broom Boy is Luke Skywalker's son. I'm like, guys, just stop with the clickbait and the stupid theories. Not everyone's related.
This is the most.
Did you hear that, JJ? Not everyone's related.
According to the fandom's theories, like this is the most incestuous galaxy ever.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Oh god.
And if you're not related to these two families, you're not important.
I mean, I guess this is like the Bushes, the Bushes, the Clintons, and the oh my god, and the Trumps now. It's like just 3 families is fighting for power. It's like, god damn.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you go into the like conspiracy political theories, then you can see that maybe we're also just fighting 2 or 3 families running the world. So maybe you can deconstruct politically Star Wars in many ways.
God, I hope they have. Don't make everyone relate. That's why Mando works. Not related to anybody.
Next season we'll know Mando's parents were because they died.
Actually,
so we don't know.
This good that you mentioned it, because we can do the plug now. We will actually, this is a aside from our main topic of conversation. We are going to be featuring at Geeky Waffles channel. They're going to be doing like weekly episodes to review and discuss each of the weekly episodes of The Mandalorian. All 3 of us will be featured a different week at a time. So I will kick things off next week, November 7th, I think is the date. discussing the second episode. Nani, when are you gonna be on?
I'm gonna be on the 21st, I believe. I don't remember what episode that is.
And then Mo's gonna wrap things up with the final episode and drop some amazing truth bombs and analysis.
Mo has the words.
Because he has the best words. And when is that, Mo?
I think it is December 18.
So please make sure to check that out once it comes out. We'll obviously drop links closer to the date, but that's our plug. So we hope you enjoy it. Back to our regular
Back to the regular programming.
Back to regular programming.
Yeah. So do you guys want to continue with the prequels and what it meant? Do you want to go into the originals and the comparison of what was happening at the time, or?
I mean, I think it's interesting since we did the analogy with the sequels and the prequels. It'd be interesting to talk about the originals with the sequels, just to kind of see that similarity / disparity.
Wait, originals and sequels or prequels?
Originals and sequels.
And sequels, yeah.
Originals, sequels, okay.
Because obviously the originals chronologically were in a very different. I mean, it started in '77.
Yeah.
But it's still a movie that is followed by the sequels, which happened right now. So actually, that's really cool, I think, to see how it segued one to the other. So.
Yeah, and they're both post-war trilogies.
Yeah.
You know, because the original trilogy came out right out of Vietnam, and the sequel trilogy came out right out of the War on Terror, which I don't know. Actually, no. Apparently, the War on Terror is not going anymore. But who the fuck knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
As opposed to the prequel trilogy, which kind of came out in a time of peace.
Apparent peace.
Apparent peace.
Yes, yes.
And setting up more war.
More war.
It's the full setup to the beginning of the empire.
Yeah.
Is it a human thing to be at war? That is a good question for another time.
Which is the whole discussion of balance of the force. Balance of the force is not a perennial thing, right? It doesn't, you don't achieve balance and then it's balanced forever. The weights are gonna shift every once in a while. So it's always a cyclical thing of trying to regain balance within you and within the galaxy. So it makes sense that the galaxy would also reflect that, journey in of itself as the characters in the saga.
Yeah.
What do you think about the politics since what did you study, Mo, again? Are you studying politics?
No, government and economics.
Oh, excuse me. Not just politics. So you are our resident expert.
Yeah, against the architect and the scientist.
Exactly.
Well, I think there's I like what Nani was going at, that transition. It reflects also. Well, I don't know if I think my neighbors are kind of having a party. I don't know if there's music going on. That's because of
you
that.
Can crash it afterwards.
Maybe I can crash it afterwards. That's what happens in Puerto Rico. Your neighbors are always having a party.
COVID, staying home.
It's not even December.
I know.
It's gonna get bad here during Christmas.
It is gonna be. Yeah, it's gonna. I am very afraid because I think this is gonna happen. A lot of businesses might be closed, so that's gonna drive people to do just parrandas. They're gonna parrandear.
Yeah.
They're gonna go.
We gotta have our Christmas, and we have the longest Christmas in the world. So.
Yep. We love our Christmas, and I'm terrified.
But I'm really afraid. I'm with you, Nani. I'm really afraid. It's
gonna get bad.
It's gonna get really bad.
Yep. But anyway, we're getting off track.
But no. So people be safe. COVID is real.
Yeah, COVID is real.
Wear your masks if you have to go out, and wash your hands for 20 seconds. It's
Mo,
not that hard.
Your parents are doctors, right?
Yes. And your
father-in-law is a doctor. And
I'm a nurse.
And Nani's a nurse.
And my dad's a doctor. So we all three of us can say, from medical families, COVID is real. Put your fucking mask on.
COVID is real. Yes.
People are actually dying. This is not fake news.
And not everyone has
this is the
world-class doctors.
Yeah, I know. I love that too. When Trump was like, "Oh, I got it. It's no big deal." Oh, right, because everybody can afford the kind of treatment that you got.
Because
right?
you had around-the-clock care from a team of doctors that are the best in the world for free. Yeah, so, well, actually, not for free. We paid for it, but whatever.
We paid. Well, yep. You also had access to
experimental drugs that no one knows
experimental treatments that no one has access to. Like, obviously, you can say, oh, it's like okay.
That's why I say that he has no agenda, because doesn't have any awareness of anything. Anyway, Mo, you were gonna
because we're getting completely off track here.
No, but that's a good because on the original trilogy, just as in back when there was like there's always like a clear bad guy. There was a clear, politically speaking, like if throughout probably all the 90s, the world wars you always had somebody that was the bad guy. The World War II came, you clearly had the Nazis and the fascists as the bad guys. And then you had the Cold War, which from everybody's perspective, US is the bad guy or USSR is the bad guy. So there's a real clear dynamic of like who's the bad guy, who's not. And
it's always the other.
It's always the other. But it also, but you're also seeing, it's also a reflection of like World War II in the sense that clearly in this sense, the other, there's something way more corrupted in. Like that's why joining, like everybody will be a rebel in this sense, because what the empire stand for, what they were committing, the horrible atrocities that happened are essentially worthy, a cause is worthy to join against. So there's that clear backdrop of like, yes, there's an evil presence that has to be stripped it out. Come to the sequels, there's no clear other, just as reflects our times 30 years later. There's the clear other is the brainwashed first order. But what's happening within internally, there's also a lot of conflict internally. Like it's not only there's an overwhelming negative but there's the lives of the individuals are affected on a lot of very different levels and different aspects. So I think,
if I'm understanding you correctly, you mean to say that like the original trilogy had like more of a macro view of the conflict, like them versus us, and like the sequel trilogy was more about like that internal conflict. Is that what you're getting at a little bit?
Yes,
what's going on within you as opposed to like a system?
Conflict. And how do you balance both? How do you balance your internal conflicts, but also knowing that you want to contribute something to the system? Like it's a different challenge. It's not as clear cut. Like it was clear cut to go against Nazi Germany. It was really clear cut.
Except they didn't join the war until they got bombed in Pearl Harbor.
Oh, true. I'm not talking about the U.S.
I'm just saying.
I'm just
saying.
But yes, no, it's true. That is true.
There's
actually true.
A lot of self-interest involved as well. You can't just always frame the U.S. as like being the good guys, because clearly England had been asking for help for forever, and the U.S. was like, I'm not getting involved until they actually got involved themselves by getting bombed, and then it's like, oh, now we're the saviors. Let's go.
Yeah.
Sorry, American viewers.
No, it's not sorry.
What? It's politics, and it's true.
That should be basic U.S. history. Yeah. I'm sorry. Like it should be.
It's not.
It's not, and they also forget that there were concentration camps for Japanese people in California.
Yep.
I
Well, there's
mean,
concentration camps now, but just
and
like
there's concentration camps now, and they're keeping kids away from their families across the border, and it's a lot of things get
did you
swept
read
under
that
the rug.
article that like the I think it was the DOJ or something like admitted that they lost like 500 kids that they can't reunite with their parents in the last
500.
something like some shit like that.
Oh my
It's
god.
intense.
Wow.
But I think that's one of the interesting things though about like the original trilogy that it does. It's not that necessarily that it's making like a the traditional like us them like Nazis and US or like US and USSR type of conflict, but it's more like oh this is here, and like we're also well it did it more with the prequels I guess, but like also is very reflective inwardly too, and not just like necessarily
Oh yeah.
talking about like us attacking the others. It's like
No, 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 no.
us defending what's right.
Like what I was getting at, I was like at the political background. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like not touching the individual journey of our characters. Just
Mm-hmm.
that political background of like that transition reflects the transitions we are seeing,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much that 30-year time
Mm-hmm.
lapse. But you're like what there's something that I wasn't clear with the sequels is that what was the difference between the rebels and the resistance?
Yeah.
The name.
The same as the Empire and the
That's it.
First Order. That was the problem with the whole thing.
Which
Because
I
you
think
don't.
that was one of the biggest missteps I feel for the sequel trilogy. Even though I love the sequel trilogy, I feel that was one of the biggest missteps in how they handled the galactic conflict
Mhm.
because it was a rehash, and it means that like us as an audience, especially coming in outside and
Mhm.
looking at things, from having seen 6 films previous to this, it's just like, well, how is this different? How why
Yeah.
why do things just have different names when it's not, it didn't feel like it was an appropriate, uh, not conclusion, but a
Or
continuation of the
transition.
story we had seen.
Yeah. A
Which I think we
transition
did.
from one to the other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which I think is something we discussed,
Mhm.
like in our A Hope Awakens episode, where we were discussing and contrasting A New Hope versus The Force Awakens, which is like I feel like The Force Awakens should have started with A New Republic, and you get to see the New Republic, and maybe the New
Yeah.
Republic is in conflict with
Mhm.
the Resistance because there's the threat of the remnants of the Empire, and just
Mhm.
call it that, and maybe it's so we can see like there's that tension already going on with the group
Yeah.
of Resistance fighters and the New
Mhm.
Republic, and then this new threat of the remnants of the Empire.
Mhm.
If you want to call them the first order, fine, call them the first order, but make it seem like that threat is coming
Yeah.
with the established government. And that way it would have been more interesting politically because you get to see like how a good guy, quote unquote, government, i.e. the New Republic, deals with like the liberal left, i.e.
Mhm.
the resistance, with this far right enemy, which is the remnants of the empire.
Mhm.
And then you get to see all that dynamic going on, and maybe they do get wiped out like in the Force Awakens, but there's still a remnant of the Republic somewhere that has to band together with the Resistance, and like you get to see those three sides then, because then I think it would have been more interesting, especially like in our day and age, comparing it to the modern politics, because then you get to see the three sides: the right, the left, and the center,
Mhm.
and like how each has to like deal with what's going on in the world. Obviously, the center here would be the New Republic, I guess, and like
Well, no, but you
how we
also
deal with
have.
those
I mean, in
threats.
the Clone Wars, you also had the Council of Independent Systems, like
Mm.
the ones that were neutral.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You had neutral planets as well that didn't want to be involved in the war. So, I mean, you don't necessarily have to go all left or all right. That's I think the problem. You're
Mhm.
too extreme. You try to go too much to one side or too much to the other side without realizing that a lot of people have views in the middle, or that like some
Like the
aspects
Bendu.
of this and some aspects of something else, and people like I don't know, just ignore that, and then everything becomes too extreme. And I think one of the real problems as well in the sequel trilogy is that you don't know what their goal is at all. Like you knew what
Yes.
the Empire wanted, you don't really know what the First Order wants, and then if it would have been done from the beginning that it is actually Palpatine trying to get to his ultimate goal, then it would have made sense if it was set up that way from the beginning. But then you have this Snoke character that nobody knows what his goal is the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a proxy Palpatine.
Yeah, a proxy Palpatine. But if you would have set it up from the beginning like that, it's actually Palpatine, and he's trying to manipulate, and he has a plan for this, and this is still actually the Empire, then it would have made sense. But because it wasn't set up that way, you don't really know where they're going. You don't know what the bad guys want. You don't really know what anybody's motivation is that much. And then you would have thought that the Republic would have learned and put different centers of government in different areas, but no, it's the same clustered together so they can get hit once and get completely destroyed. I mean,
why would you
it's like they learned
Navy?
They learned nothing from what happened in any of the previous films. They learned nothing.
Even the Resistance didn't learn from the Rebel Alliance, because the Rebel Alliance learned after Hoth, let's not have a stationary base. Let's keep a a space-based base that we can just move around all the time so that the Empire can't catch us. And what does the Resistance do? Let's go to the car and put a base there.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, it's so disappointing. It's like they learned nothing from everything that happened before. And then at this point, when the movie starts, the rebels are supposed to have won. So you would think, over 30 years, they would have had a more established form of government than just, those central planets. And then everything falls apart and nobody shows up. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Resistance shows up as very weak throughout. It's like they're the rebels all over again, except last time they were supposed to have won.
Well, what do you think about that setup for the political framework for the sequels, though?
Well, I think.
Do you think it was framed appropriately for us to understand what was going on with the galaxy, or do you feel like we needed to have a little more things fleshed out? Because I think it's a little. Before you answer, sorry. I think it's a little unfair in a way to compare it with the original trilogy, because the original trilogy did the same thing, but to argue against that in a way, the original trilogy existed in a vacuum when it came out.
Yep.
So in that sense, it could do whatever it wanted, because there was nothing to, that explained anything that happened before or after it. Mm-hmm. So it had the luxury of doing whatever it could.
Yeah.
So I don't think the sequel trilogy could do what it did, because it didn't have that luxury, because we already know the backstory.
We have 6 movies behind it.
I guess that's what they actually did. They didn't have the luxury, but they still took it.
Mm-hmm. Which didn't work, in my opinion.
It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But in a sense, it's also, I don't know, it's a subtle, hint at, how we've also treated a lot of, other countries. And when I say we, it's, us living in the U.S. Yeah. It's also, but
what, ignore the history and do whatever you want?
Yeah.
I just got the best notification you could ever get on your phone.
The Mandalorian returns.
For days. But going back, I think it did well, kind of what you were saying, Goose, about how you have the right, the left, and you had the center that just pretty much got destroyed. It's not.
Yeah, it's
not.
Actually, I think it's complete in a way. The center is.
It is.
Destroy it.
Yeah, the center is so irrelevant at this moment that they just completely destroyed it, and it's a reflection of what we're saying. Yeah. So.
Never thought.
That's so sad.
It is completely sad. Which
like the moderate Republican. It doesn't exist.
No, but that's the thing. I'm sure they have to exist. It's just that they've been outshined by.
Yeah. Now you have to be an extremist or it doesn't work. Basically.
Right.
Yeah. That's that. Now it's a world of extremes.
It's a world of extremes, and that is really unfortunate.
Yep.
Because that only means that for every action, no matter from which side it comes, is going to have an equal reaction from the other side. Once, you can see that through history.
No, but we're
the
at a
parties are
boiling
going to
point.
change.
Yeah, it's a boiling point, and
But I
everything's
mean,
getting a
but
little
when
bit more
you're,
aggressive.
I mean, but
Yeah.
when your right is fascism or some sort of it, and your left is just like a very moderate version of social democracy, your center ain't that great. So like skewing to like one side or the other means that like you're taking like a either negative or positive sense, at least in my mind. Because I think the center of those two positions isn't a positive. Someone's gonna get
But
fucked if you're in that center.
Yeah.
but then, and I think this is kind of.
Which is why the New Republic got blown to smithereens.
But I don't know if this was intentional in the Last Jedi or not, as a political statement. Now I can just see it, but there's also that call to that center. Like, how come the center is not also doing something? Like, why is the center afraid to also take a stand?
Yeah.
And in the
How so?
because so when Leia calls in for help from the other systems that were supposedly her allies, her friends,
Yeah.
what you will, in a sense, you can see as, that center, that maybe that, moderate Republican, that more liberal Republican, in a sense, more center, or at the other side too, Democrat. Just
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
you
when you
get,
frame it that way, the answer is easy, but I'll let you finish.
but when the moment came for a call to action, none of them took it.
Because they were
Took.
they were too afraid
Yeah.
of what was coming. Which is kind of, if you're gonna compare it in apples to apples type of things, it's what's happening in a way with like the quote unquote moderate Republicans in the Senate that are too afraid to like go against the grain because they know they'll either lose favor with Mr. Trump, or they'll lose voters because their voters are leaning in one direction. So they just stay silent and don't do anything. So I think in that way, the way you're framing it makes perfect sense and frames it in a very poetic way in terms of why they want to respond to that call to action. Fear.
But
Yeah, and that's what happens when your government is ruled by fear.
yeah.
But there's a breaking point, which is what we see in The Rise of Skywalker. At the end, it's too much to handle, and everyone just rallies together to be like,
Everybody just tries together.
Yeah.
But which is in a way that boiling point we're seeing. That's where, like, it's funny.
You're saying
like,
we need episode 11, episode 10. Sorry.
but episode 10 will also be. It could be a reflection of what's coming. So there's going to be a boiling point in a sense. So kind of like I like that quote that I don't know who said it, but like World War III will be, I mean, 4 will be with like sticks and stones or whatnot.
Because we're going to be so destroyed by World War III that 4 is going to be going back to sticks and stones.
Yes. So, but I think
World War III. As long as we have internet, that sounds fine.
No,
no. If we're at sticks and stones, there's no internet, Goose. There's like barely life.
Give me some hope.
But you see, but no. But I think that was a reaction to like the mutual assured destruction world. Like everybody had their nukes aim at each other. I think a new way to frame it. I think whatever's like we're headed into like a kind of like a civil war or like World War III. That is not. It's not gonna be based mostly on like violence on a killing basis. It's gonna be more of an internal violence. It's gonna it might like that's kind of like what will happen if you have all of these groups just came together to go against this boiling point. But then what's next? Because it's just a reaction. This wasn't they weren't thought out. It wasn't something that we have to kind of like maybe that might be the difference with what was the rebellion, that it was a thought out.
No,
What?
but I think the originals, and especially because the originals were post Vietnam, and I really think that the Clone Wars is a civil war.
Yes, but
Mhm.
that's no. I'm talking like the future episode 10.
Yeah.
It
Oh, I
will
thought
be
you
Oh,
went back and said like
yeah, I
that
thought you
it
were
no
going
wasn't
no
back.
no no
Yeah,
necessarily.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
no.
Okay. So
Sorry
you think
sorry.
it's gonna be a civil war again, or no?
Well, if
I mean, in a way, it's always a civil war,
Yeah.
but like depending on like the, if you're looking at it in a microcosm or a macrocosm, right? Because like,
true,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think the
yeah.
original trilogy is a civil war because it's
It
like
is. Yeah.
within the same group of people,
Mhm.
so to speak. But the
And it's the prequels
prequels
too,
are
because
also a
that's how you
civil
set it
war.
up. You set it up to happen this way, so it ends up being a civil war.
Yeah.
I mean, they frame it a little bit differently, but it really is at its core. The Clone Wars is a civil war.
Yeah.
I see the Clone Wars. Why I can't? Why would the original trilogy be a civil war?
Hmm?
I don't. Why do you see the original trilogy as a civil war?
As a civil war,
Because it's still the group of people that are citizens of the same group,
yeah.
the
I
same
mean, you
collective
have,
fighting against
and
themselves.
especially at the
right?
beginning, you still actually have the Senate working. I mean,
Yeah.
Palpatine like breaks it up at the beginning, but it was basically an
So,
insurgency
yeah.
from within.
I would have called it a war if like some like foreign invaders from the unknown regions had come to invade the galaxy.
But it's
then
from
it's
within.
a war.
It happens
But it's
from
like it's
within.
people uprising
Yeah.
to take over like the government.
Yeah.
So that's why it's
Yeah.
still
It's a
framed as
coup
a civil war.
d'etat. It's a civil war.
All three trilogies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Because you
I guess
have
it
a
makes sense because
self-contained system.
it's a self-contained system.
Yeah.
It's a galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, episode 1 was not civil war though, because episode 1, the Nemoidians were invading Naboo, so that was a war because it's a group of people invading a separate.
Yeah, but that's a trade.
Federation.
Well, it was a
Federation,
trade
so-
dispute in
Yeah,
official
but that's,
capacity,
you can
but
do
it was
all the
actually a
time.
war.
I understand that, but you can do it right now, like with when you do in the Clone Wars with the banking clans during restrictions and
Yeah.
destabilizing. That's what happens during a civil war. The banks go haywire, money's nowhere to be found, the people suffer. I mean, it's
Well, money's not to be found for some people.
right for some people. Obviously, war
i.e.
profiteering is a
normal
thing.
people.
Yeah.
As The Last Jedi, beautifully exposed by our brother from another mother, Puerto Rican, Benicio del Toro said. It's all. I'm gonna learn you something, Finn. It's all a game.
Yep.
All a game.
It's all business.
Yep.
God, I
He
love
shoots
that
you
scene so
here,
much.
I shoot you back. He
Gonna say
buys
it
this
right now.
weapon, I buy this weapon.
DJ is an underrated character. He was one of my favorite characters in The Last Jedi.
I know, he was very
Yes.
unexplored and he was exposing what was wrong with the system to begin with.
But that's why I
There's-
like that he didn't show up at any other time
Because
he
it's
just
like there.
showed up for that purpose. Yeah. It's like, hey.
I
And
get
like,
my nugget of wisdom and I'm done.
and he's not good or
Yes.
bad. He's in the middle.
He's not good or what? Yeah.
And I especially love that scene when they get caught and he sells them out, and then
Yeah.
Finn tells him, "No, you're wrong." He just looks at him. He's like, "Maybe."
Maybe. Yeah.
I saw that. I'm like, "Oh my god, genius!" He didn't say, "Oh, we'll see," and that scene when he's just like, it's like,
Maybe.
"Oh, you blow them up today, they blow you up tomorrow."
Mhm.
It's just like, oh, that character is perfect to like exemplify the ambivalence of war and the unnecessary aspect of like some of these conflicts, and how everything's just like this weird machine that like serves no one but the people that benefit,
That get power and money
financially.
from it. Yep. So. Because I mean, it's barely even about ideology anymore. There's no ideology.
But then that. But now, I really like that character.
All
But
about
now,
money, yeah.
now there's something even more intriguing about the character. If
Which one, DJ?
DJ, yeah, if you're in a position that you know the truth, are you morally obligated
But what is
to
the truth?
to no but like that,
Well,
you know,
I get what
like,
Mo's saying
and,
because he knows the truth. That, like both sides are profiting.
Right,
Like,
like-
but he knows that one side is doing one thing with that profit, and the other
and
side is
the
doing
other.
something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something that I think Clone Wars also a little bit poses at times.
Mm-hmm.
The series, like, what's the threshold to compel a person to action?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same. It's the same thing in Star Wars as it is in real life. It The thing that compels you to action is when it affects you personally.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise, it's
But
like
but but ha,
have you guys
but
seen
ha,
the Netflix film, the Enola Holmes movie?
Yeah.
Uh,
no, not
it
yet.
was okay. I mean, it's not the best movie
Eh,
I've ever seen. It was
yeah.
good. It was good. It was fun. But like, there's one scene in particular that actually stuck with me. That's actually very good. It's when like Sherlock Holmes is talking to the karate master. I forgot her name.
Uh-huh.
But like, she's talking to Sherlock about why he doesn't join politics,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Oh, because it's boring or whatever." And
Yeah.
she tells him like, "No, you don't join it because like someone like you who benefits from the system has no need to change it."
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the type of thing that we're talking about now. It's just like, yeah, people that either aren't affected or
Mm-hmm.
benefit from it have like
Mm-hmm.
no need to engage with it or have
Yeah.
an opinion on it, which is like some of the problems that I have when I'm like engaging with other people that their stance is always like, oh, I don't like politics, or I just want to be neutral, or like I think it's like, well, then clearly it doesn't affect you or it doesn't affect anyone close to you. And if you're benefiting from it, then you have no need to like want to engage on it or have a discourse on it.
No, and then you have the other side, actually, the ones that feel so oppressed that they don't think that them voicing anything out is going to make a difference.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you also have that side of people that are like, I don't think my vote's going to matter, or I don't think if I say anything it's going to matter, so I'll just keep my mouth shut and go on with the day, and then that's it. So,
Which is a good time to say, even though I think everyone can understand what our political leanings might be. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. If you disagree with us, go vote, because your
go
vote
vote.
does matter. But
Yeah.
go vote immediately. Vote
It's your
early.
right.
Vote
People
on
fought
time.
for the right to vote. A lot of
Yes.
people didn't have the right to vote for centuries. Women didn't have a right to vote for a long time. Just go exercise your right to vote. A vote does matter. Just one single vote matters. Everybody thought wasn't going to matter last elections because nobody thought there was any way that Trump was going to get elected, but he did.
But if you want to vote for him, vote for him.
Yeah,
But if
just
you're
go
going to
vote.
vote in person, wear a mask.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Wear a mask. COVID is real.
I'm looking at Mo's. I'm looking at Mo's screen.
Frozen face.
Sure, he was frozen. Oh, he blinked.
Oh.
There we go. He's still there.
Uh,
he went into hermit mode for a minute.
yes,
He went into
did.
Jedi mode.
Yeah, he was like the
Jedi.
Ben dude. He was going into stasis.
No, it's kind of.
Sorry, we did the
going
voting
with-
thing.
No. It ties with that. What came into mind was that if you don't participate, and I think this kind of like piggybacking. I don't remember the exact words, but kind of like Aristotle, how they framed it. But if you do not participate in government, then you also have no right to complain on who's ruling.
George Carlin disagrees with you.
What does George Carlin say?
What
George Carlin said that he actually has the most right to complain about it because he didn't put them in power. You did. So I can't complain about everything you guys
No,
decided
but
for
if
me.
you didn't actually take a part, if you didn't vote for the opposition, George
But
Carlin's wrong.
But George Carlin, when he said that, he was in his old cynical self. So
He was
he's
always
still hilarious,
cynical.
but like at that time, it's like,
No, I know, but I get it. Like if you voted as to the opposition and you don't like him, then you say it's not my fault. You guys picked him. But if you had no part of it in at all, you really don't have the right to complain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not your fault who gets elected. But if you didn't even try to make a difference, you don't get to whine about it.
I wonder how elections in Star Wars work. Though. Can you vote from home? I would imagine you can from your holodeck.
Well, they were weird because they had this Senate, and they could vote from their pods themselves. Like they have their representatives. I don't know how it would work planet to planet. I guess their own planet decides how they want to do their election process.
Because even though Queen Amidala was queen, they're still elected queens. So there are elections, but I wonder why they don't have kings though. I'm sure there's an explanation that I haven't read, but
I don't think we've gone enough into like separate planets politics enough to be able to make that decision because there are kings.
I think Rebels actually
Oh, Rebels
did a
political.
lot of
Fine, I shall continue.
Well, they focused a lot on Ezra's planet political development.
yeah. No, but
I mean,
honey, that reminded me though. If you want like a really good Star Wars book that talks about politics, but doesn't do it like in a boring way like the prequels kind of do most of the time.
Yeah, I know.
I know I've recommended this book a billion times, but I'll keep doing it because it was actually really good because it covers everything that you want in a Star Wars book, but it also has really good political intrigue. Oh, I love our episode. But it's the new Thrawn book, Thrawn Ascendancy.
Oh, you said the Thrawn book, yeah.
Yes, Chaos Rising. That book actually has a lot of politics in it, but it doesn't get in the way of like being, it doesn't get in the way in the story that makes it boring. It actually feeds the story. It's really good. Read it. I finally fucking finished it. It took me forever because I'm lazy. But it's really,
but it was
really good. It's really good. It's one of the best Star Wars books of the new canon.
Of the new canon. Did you read Ahsoka? I love Ahsoka.
I have not read Ahsoka. That's one of the few books that I have not read.
Because you think they'll maybe destroy the character for her or something?
No, it's just that I don't read all. I don't know. It's just that I'm very picky with like the books. I don't read all of them. I read a lot of them. I don't read all of them. And I don't know how I pick them. It's just like
you randomly get attracted to some story or something.
Yeah. Like for the whole, and it's on the whole, like I'm a little bit ashamed of it, but I kind of avoid the YA books. So like that's one way that I like, already take the skip. But
oh god,
there's a bunch I haven't read, but like the new Thrawn politics, that's the topic of the day. Very especially because it's like a political structure we've never seen. It's based on families and like politics within the family. It's good. Read it.
Okay.
I mean, and you actually, I mean, just because I've been watching Clone Wars, obviously. I mean, you have planets where you don't even have like a main divide. Like you have the planet with like the witches, and then Darth Maul's side is like the men on the other side, and so there's like a lot of conflict within the planets themselves. And then you have.
Have you played Fallen Order, by the way?
I haven't played the new one.
If you like Dathomir and the Clone Wars, that part of the planet on Fallen Order is gonna freak you the fuck out.
Okay, I need to play more. I know I've been falling behind in my playing. I did better than you on Ghost of Tsushima, though I passed that.
I beat it. Now I have to do the Legends mode. Well, I bought it a month ago. You bought it what, 3 months ago? Obviously, you beat it before.
How good was it though?
Oh, it's so good. It was so good. I have 97% of the trophies. I'm only missing like 3.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Going back to the actual topic. I mean, you have to talk about.
Well, it's part of the topic. It's Ghost of Tsushima is samurai based on Akira Kurosawa, and George Lucas, Star Wars. There, you made the connection.
Make the connection.
Done.
If you want to make more connects, you have to start watching more anime.
Yeah. I just can't get into it. I can't. I've tried.
We need a Nani teaches you nerd section.
I've tried.
Nani's nerd.
Nani's nerd corner.
The last. I'll tell you. This is definitely a tangential conversation. I'll tell you the top 3 animes that I actually saw, and they were when I was in high school, obviously. I mean, I've tried to see like what's his face? Oh my god. Kiki's Delivery Service. What's the director's name?
Miyazaki?
Miyazaki. I've tried to see the
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki.
You haven't seen
films.
any Miyazaki?
No, I've seen like 3 or 4 of his films.
I haven't seen any.
You haven't
seen them? Oh, you haven't seen them though?
Do you have HBO Max?
Yes.
Okay.
Then they're there. They have both Kurosawa and Miyazaki. So
Nani, we talked about this.
I know, but I had you on one series. You have to give me a break.
I'm surprised.
We're going on a tangent here.
I'm surprised that you haven't seen Miyazaki and I have. But like in terms of anime, I mean, and some people would obviously say that like this doesn't count as anime, even though it definitely is. Dragon Ball Z,
It does count.
Sailor Moon, which was
It's amazing still.
the shit when I was growing up, and then Tenchi Muyo. That was like those were my 3 animes
And Yu
when
Yu
I was growing up.
Hakusho back in the day.
But like,
too.
but after that, like I tried to see other animes.
The
and,
newer
like, I
stuff?
could not.
You
Like
don't even like Miyazaki. What do you not like about Miyazaki?
it's not that I don't like it. It's just that it doesn't get me going. You know, it's
Which
just
ones
like
have you watched? Because I
Kiki's
hate
Delivery.
Kiki's Delivery Service, by the way. I hate it.
Tell me the names because I don't know the names.
Howl's
I saw
Moving
the
Castle.
Did I see that one? I don't know.
Howl's Moving Castle is my favorite. Then
I saw the
Spirited
Delivery Service.
Away.
Yes, I saw that one. Yes.
Spirited Away is great.
I saw that one.
Princess Mononoke.
I saw that one. Yeah, those are the 3. There, boom, you did it. I didn't say, okay, see, this is the problem. I didn't say I didn't hate them. They were fine. They just didn't like turn me on. You know what I mean? I saw it, I was like, yeah, these are good movies, but like,
no.
But I can't, but doesn't make me want to keep going.
It didn't float your boat.
No, and I think that's fine.
What have you tried?
Okay.
Actual series?
I've seen like I remember like watching some series with the person like I was dating before, and she was really into anime, but like I couldn't. Like I no.
Okay,
Attack on Titan might be one that I could get into. Anyway, but going back into politics and Star Wars, where the fuck were we? Before we went into like our anime little tangent there.
I know.
No, but that's good. We're also covering other media, like nerd media.
That was our point.
True.
Yes.
Well, but I mean, it's hard to cover other nerd media like we promised we'll do when like we have COVID and other nerd media isn't coming.
I know.
Out. So maybe when like more the Marvel TV shows come out with like Wanda, the WandaVision show, and like Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Fine,
we'll
I'll
have
talk
more things
anime
to
with
talk
Mo.
about. Or you.
There you go.
Well, we'll talk about.
It's
because I have some ideas about like other things we can like record, but we'll do that. We'll do that when we're not recording. Because I think that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, where did we actually leave off? Does anybody remember before we went on this massive tangent?
It was a pretty huge.
But I guess this gives me like a clean slate on something I wanted to bring up with like more like political theory for those that might be slightly
you're
interested.
The expert.
I don't know much about how the sequel trilogy, if it really portrayed it, but at least on the prequel and the original trilogy, you see. So on the prequel trilogy, you see what's called like the tyranny of the majority. You have like a seeming democracy, but it really is not. It's not representative of all diversity. It's just representative of what's the majority that's in power, which kind of like reflects how up to, I guess, the break point, that's how it's been. It's always been whoever's in power stays in power, and they create mechanisms around the system to make that happen, to keep that in place. So you have that tyranny, which is masked as democracy. Then on the original trilogy, you have the concentration of power in an emperor, which is another corruption of power. Like so Aristotle has like different levels of like. So the first one, and it depends. It's almost like so it's the rule of the majority. Then the corruption is the rule of the majority for the majority. That's called democracy. That's what. So in a way, what we hail as the best is actually corruption of what's the best. The best is the rule of the majority for all. which is a little bit different than the rule of the majority for
Me.
the majority. Yes.
Or for me.
Or for me, yeah. And then you have the
The best
second
words.
strata,
Mm-hmm.
which is the what you can now call like the oligarchy, which is the rule of the few for the few, and then what's the best version is the rule of the few for all. And that's one of the most that's the one of the rarest ones, because it will imply that you will have a council. I mean, I guess maybe the Jedi Council might count as that.
Well,
As that.
that's what's happening in the United States for the last couple of years. The
Yeah.
minority chooses the governing body.
Oh, yeah, but they don't rule for all. They rule for themselves.
Well, if Trump has his way, it's like he already said, like, oh, well, they stole that first year. I got fired. It's like, oh, where do you stop, man? Where do you stop? Did you start doing that? But whatever. I don't want to get that deep in the weeds. Sorry, keep going.
And then you have the rule of one for one, and then the rule of one for all. So
Power of two restores the one true emperor.
There you go. So Palpatine is the corruption of that. Is the rule of one for one. What we see, I guess, in a way, in the sequels, it might be that middle, that oligarchy, the rule of the few, but for the benefit of the few, not for all. And then what we see on the prequels is the rule of the many, just for the many and not for all.
Well, but it's weird. It's weird with when you make that comparison with the sequel trilogy, because at least in the original trilogy, especially going into Return of the Jedi, and we see Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar and General Reich and not Reich, fuck, I forgot his name. Sorry, nerds. But when you see like Mon Mothma, you can tell that she's the leader, of the Rebel Alliance, and in a way, you finally see the hierarchy of the Rebel Alliance, and you can kind of tell that there's going to be a hierarchy that's going to rule or like govern once the Empire is defeated. But like in the end of the Rise of Skywalker, we don't have that. We don't have any.
We don't get to
hierarchy
see
anymore.
it, so we don't know where
But it's just like,
it went.
So what?
Or,
so
or what type of government they actually established. What type of government was the New Republic?
Yeah.
Because democracy as well, because it can be argued up and down all the way back to Greece, how they defined it, which was the polis system. It wasn't necessarily a full democracy. I mean, and the problem with calling, and I'm going to piss people off right now, the problem with calling the US still a democracy is because a democracy is about the people choosing what they want, right? Yeah. But when you're lying to your people and the vote is based on ignorance instead of knowledge,
and you don't allow people to vote in an egalitarian manner.
Yeah. And every time you try to do something, it's going to be contested. Oh, this is fraud. And there's been people that have been threatened to vote one way or the other. I mean, you've disrupted the whole system. And it's something that's very sad about the US today, that ignorance is valued over education. It's valued over knowledge. The US has one of the
lowest voter turnouts in the world.
Yeah. When it used to be one of the first that pioneered
democracy,
independence, democracy, intelligence, knowledge, science, all these things. That's what the US was known for at one time, and now.
But to be devil's advocate on that, they always pioneered it in a very biased way. True. It wasn't for all.
It wasn't. I know.
No.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's one of those things. It's like if you make those things easy and accessible for everyone to participate in, then you have an actual egalitarian and participatory system. And like, even though like, I'm not saying that things in Puerto Rico are fucking fantastic in terms of how people vote, but at least it's a holiday, so people have no fucking excuse to go and vote, and like everyone has an equal opportunity. And like, I think Puerto Rico, and Mo, correct me if I'm wrong, or not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have actually one of the higher voter turnouts, like at least in the Western Hemisphere.
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
I know for a fact the U.S. has one of the lowest voter turnouts in the world.
After so many countries have fought for that right, it's still amazing to me that.
But that doesn't mean anything because I guess Russia has like a very high voter turnout. But
Coerced.
if I were to bet what's Putin's favorite meme, it would be the meme of Palpatine saying like, "I love democracy."
Yes.
Him and Xi Jinping just send each other that meme every election time.
Yeah, I love democracy.
Hey, bro,
and then he has the joke with Trump that he loves democracy too.
Yeah, like, hey. Sorry, Russian listeners, even though we know no one's listening in Russia. Yeah.
But if you do, use your VPNs.
Yes. Be part of the resistance.
Be part of the resistance. No, I think.
Oh, so
honestly,
maybe we have Russian listeners. We just don't know they're from Russia because they're using
Maybe
VPNs.
that's the guy from Bangladesh.
Yes. or the girls, assume genders.
No, but I honestly, I really think the problem right now is that we find ourselves in a country that used to be a pioneer, and now it's actually better to be ignorant. Like, that's what's being promoted. It's better to be ignorant than intelligent. Like, science is being regarded as lies and fake news. I mean,
yeah. Oh my God, it's so baffling. It's just like you're criticizing and sidelining and want to discredit the people that have created the world around you. It's one of those things like I find baffling, especially like just to make it a little funnier than like politics, like flat earthers, for example. Like people who like support flat Earth are doing it from their iPhones, which like are engineered by scientists that like have to, for example, account for GPS.
Yeah.
Which like
and
has to take the differential forces of gravity and like take into account like how gravity is distorted by going into space and have to send a signal. It's like seriously, like you're discounting all of that makes the shit that you're using to like spout your nonsense out into the world. It's mind-boggling to me. So it's like, and it ties into what you were saying, Nani. It's just like this whole system that we have that like has created the accessibility for us to be able to do the things that we want, and now you're just like discrediting the mechanisms that allow you to do and say the things that you are doing and saying.
Because just because you say something doesn't mean it's
that
true.
was a goose moment.
Yeah. Because it's
you had your.
Because it's what I was saying before. I mean, back when you had to say something, you had to back it up. Yeah. Good job.
Good job, Goose.
You had to back it up. You had to cite sources. You had to say where you're getting your information from. Now people just spew whatever crap they come up with, and people believe it if it's trending.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is the society that we live in now. I think it's
I hope you guys said that in a positive.
sad.
No, it's kind of like it ties to have this headcanon that we're actually living.
Yes.
It's a headcanon. There's completely.
But with real life.
But with real life. Oh yeah, I got 100 headcanons for real life. But one of them is I think we're living in like hell. There's actual hell.
Yes. No, one of my favorite headcanons.
So it's not that bad,
because
but it's
the
still
Cubs
horrible.
won. This is hell. If the Cubs had lost, yeah, because the Cubs, as you guys probably know, the Cubs have been the worst team in MLB for like 100 years. Like they hadn't won the World Series, and since they broke the curse, that's one of the headcanons that people have. Since they broke the curse and won the World Series in 2016, that's why Trump won, and we're living in hell because the Cubs won.
Some curse was broken.
Which I actually would agree with because I actually came here to Chicago that year the Cubs won, and like it was amazing. And all of a sudden, like a couple of months later, the election is just like, oh, what? This does not make sense. You cannot have this amount of joy and celebration and then
this hatred.
This. Honestly, I remember going to bed like I didn't even saw I went to bed and then wake up and I put on the radio I didn't even put it was just like NPR on the radio, and then all of a sudden it's like they said something like, oh, the new President Trump, and I was like, wait, what? Am
Wait,
I
what?
awake?
Wait, yes,
Is
yes,
this real? Like,
yes.
yeah, that's how it
Oh,
played.
in Chicago, it was interesting because I was like with my friends, and like all my friends were like confident that we were gonna have a completely different result. And we went to a pizza place, one of our favorite pizza places, and one of like the funnest parts of town. So we were like, oh, let's go out for the election. All of a sudden, like we went right after work, and then we were having fun, having beers, having drinks, and all of a sudden, like things weren't going the way we thought. And like you can hear like the bar getting less rowdy, and like people just
As things
not
started
having
to
as
go
much fun.
down.
And then after whatever happened, everyone was just like, well, I guess we're going home, right? Okay. And it was like, I think the election that year was like a Thursday or a Friday or something. So it was like close to the weekend. So it was like a time where you expect the street we were in to be very, very loud because
Yeah,
people
and
were
this is
out.
before COVID.
And yeah, it was
You could
2016.
actually be outside.
So we went outside to like get our Ubers to go back home after the election, and then it was just quiet. It was the most eerie thing I've ever experienced here in Chicago. Like the five corners, quiet. When it's always like a hustle and bustle.
No, I remember that I was keeping up with it, and then Hillary was obviously winning, and then I started getting bored, and I was like, I changed the channel, started watching a movie or something. Wally had already gone to bed because Wally goes to bed way earlier than I do usually. And right before going to bed, after like binging something, I turn on the news, and you see the crawl. Like they've already done reporting. You just see the crawl, the President Trump, and I was like, no, and I wake my husband up. It's like shaking him, literally. I was like, Trump won. He's like, wait, what? What? Wait, what? What? Trump won. You're not real, right? Like, this is in my head, right? This isn't actually happening. You're not real.
I'm dreaming.
Yeah, no, he was just like, this isn't real, right? Look at the crawl.
You weren't married back then. How the fuck? What the fuck was that?
We weren't married back then, correct?
Oh my god! I hope someone else doesn't listen to this episode.
We're already living together.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I just remember. Sorry, I just got flashbacks.
This is 2020. I mean, or 2016, I guess.
I know. I was like, wait. I remember it. Anyway.
No, but anyway, it's just like, wait, is this true? There's no way this is true.
Do you think
there was this shock of like, there's no way this actually happened?
Do you think that people in the galaxy felt that way when like Palpatine declared the Empire?
I don't think they know enough. I don't know if the parliamentary system was well established enough that actual citizens on independent planets would have known what's happening.
But what about like I because this it does get really complicated because how deep were the tendrils of the empire?
Yeah. Well, the Empire very deep.
Yeah.
The Republic maybe not so much.
No, but how do you know?
Oh, well,
Puerto Rico. That's Puerto Rico.
See, that's a good thing.
Quarantine.
Quarantine.
That's Puerto Rico quarantine. Yeah.
We don't get that shit.
We do. We get it every day.
Our mayor trusts us to stay in.
You should not be trusted.
Is that
numbers
working?
In the U.S. are getting insane?
Yep.
I don't trust Wanda. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Can send that thing, but she's still doing her rallies. Well, was before she lost. Anyway, so what were you guys saying about like Palpatine's polling numbers in the galaxy?
Well, yeah, because I mean, basically, he's chosen by the Senate, who are representatives of their own planets. But
he got chosen after a vote of no confidence. So we don't know if that's obviously that's not a normal parliamentary procedure. So that means that we don't know if the
I think it
Senate
was a wartime
always
decision.
Exclusively
I think it
votes
was
for the chancellor.
Yeah. No, I think it was a very wartime decision. Like back when they would suspend the Senate from Rome, and you would choose Caesars.
Yes.
And then you could give them maximum power in times of war. You could vote them in.
Yes.
So obviously you took advantage of that, but I have no idea how, because obviously you're dealing with the galaxy. You're not dealing with states or countries.
Yeah, I doubt that they would
You're
have
dealing with entire planets
elected
and then
elections.
yeah, and then you have completely different planets, and you don't know what system of government each planet has. Because some of them seem to have a combination of royalty and parliament, like Mandalore, because you have Duchess Satine and then you have the Prime Minister. You could have other versions of royalty.
But if you're gonna compare it with like real world,
yeah,
I was gonna say Puerto Rico. That's the real world for us. But like I mean, like Earth world, that's kind of like the UK, where you have the Queen, who has no real power, and then like the actual Prime Minister. So
yeah, but how would that work out if you're actually ordered not by like the UN or what if it's like an actual government that you actually listen to, because barely anybody listens to UN. Sorry, had to throw that in there. The UN doesn't have the power to change anything, really.
Well, I think it's less comparable with the UN. I think it's less comparable with the UN as it's more comparable with the federal government and like state governments. I think that's more how the Republic seems to work in Star Wars. Like the Republic is the federal government, and each planet is a state government. If that makes sense.
I kind of see like how before Palpatine, it's like how Nani's saying, the Senate was kind of like that's kind of what triggered the whole vote of no confidence. Like, oh, we have to do like that investigation into the system. Like, is this really happening? Like, that was just the cusp of it. So that means that at least to me, like the backstory is that they just don't do anything. They don't come because you're so bogged down with that parliamentary
procedure,
like, with procedure, with thousands of, I mean, no, really, it's a galaxy. It has to be millions of planets.
That's literally what they say in episode 1 when like Padme is gonna leave Coruscant. She says like she literally says like, it is clear to me that the Republic no longer functions, and she storms out to fucking leave. So it's just like, that's when we see that like the parliamentary procedures and how like the Congress of the Republic just doesn't work, which I think is beautiful because it's very analogous to what's happening with our day-to-day right now, with what's happening in our current political system. If we see that, it's just like, I mean, even I think the person or the entity or the system that has a lower approval rating than the president is Congress as a whole. Like, I think most Americans of both parties agree that like how Congress works is a piece of shit.
Yeah. They're not getting things done.
No, and like the way they do get things done is so blatantly transparent in how partisan it is. That it's it disenfranchises people, and then it goes into what you were saying, Nani. This kind of makes people not want to vote because it's like just people watching out for themselves. Yeah. And I think that the prequels really did a good job to showing that, which I think is a symptom of why it was boring. Which maybe that was by design. Maybe it was supposed to be boring because it's supposed to see like how it's boring by design, so that you don't engage with it. It's like, oh,
and you don't pay attention to it. You think it's not something you have to pay attention to. It's fine. So you kind of like let it happen.
Yeah.
And then when it affects you personally, you're like, what the crap just happened?
Yep. How did we get here? And the breadcrumbs have been, the path how we got here is clear. Yeah. It's just that if you're not paying attention.
You can say it about the US now. You can see the path that led us here if you look at the patterns.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just didn't want to see it. And here we are.
Here we are.
Elections are coming.
But if there's something we've learned from Star Wars and from history as a whole, is that like the pendulum of history always swings towards the right direction. Always at some point, and sometimes it'll swing back, but it will swing back. Lead us towards progress. So right now it might
And
be
there's
like in some dark times, but like, hey, the Republic was in dark times, but then Luke Skywalker came and fucked it up, brought light times. So now maybe we're just waiting for Ray.
no,
No.
I think it's time. I think it's we're past one person. I think it's
Hmm.
time for
It's become systematic.
it's a
Yeah.
systematic. It's it's
It's
it's
yeah.
it's about getting to know, like you really have to get to know what let you here as a person and how you contribute to that system, because it's systematic in every sense.
Hmm.
So it's, I mean, maybe yeah, we somebody might be a good example, but I don't know.
No, this is gonna take. I mean, hopefully Trump doesn't get elected again, and then we can start to go through some healing to the country in general, because we really need to focus again on that education matters.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's also education matters. Ignorance is the death of everything.
yeah.
And we have a president who is massively ignorant and promotes ignorance because obviously it gives him more power. The less people know, the more he can get away with.
Well, I think the biggest issue that he has is, besides that, is more so the attitude of like being anti self-reflective and not allowing dissent. And it's just like, for example, like anything, I think it's one of the cool things that we do with our podcast is like having three people, and then when we have
Mm-hmm.
guests, a fourth person, but like having three points of view
Mm-hmm.
with which to like see where we're all coming from and like try to correct each other or like influence each other to see, how we could improve our opinions on something. And I think that's one of the big problems that we're having, and not only like the Trump discourse, but in discourse in general.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to do that. We don't want to do any correction or acknowledge if there's any fault in anything. I think that's the best thing going forward. And I think, as you were saying, that's what education is most useful in, is like
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that, like, hey, you can know something but still be corrected or expand upon what
Yeah.
you know. Which it might be like a good point, because I think we've been going on for a long time. I think that could be like a good point to like kind of start wrapping up. So I don't know if like anyone else has like any other comments to start wrapping up this conversation, because we've been going on for a while. I think this has been very interesting. But what do you think, Mo?
I think I want to wrap up in a more positive note,
Mm-hmm.
because unfortunately the state of affairs are pretty harsh, and we all get affected in different ways. If there's times where anxiety is rampant, and it's hard. So I want to end in the sense that what Star Wars really shows is that there's always hope. Like it's now in us to like take care of that hope. So as like be just go out, learn, read, like and as Nani said, like education is just key. So we don't want to end up with the corrupted versions of the governments we've seen in Star Wars, then we need we all need to all be more consciously, and maybe be a little bit less than like DJ and more like Luke or somebody else, and
Yes, yes.
like no, like it's okay to be DJ, but
I know.
help out. Be on the maybe. Always be on the
Don't
maybe.
be Switzerland. Yes.
Yes. So that's my last comments. There's always hope.
I would just like to tell everybody again to just go and vote. It's your right. Exercise it. A lot of people do not have the right to vote, so just go. I mean, you can vote for Trump too if you like him. We're not picking
Go
sides
for it.
really. Just
Yes.
exercise your right. Pick, do something, and become more educated if you can. Don't just read Twitter. Like, grab a book, go
Or a
to the
headline.
library, and actually do research on people that are acknowledged as people in the field, not just some random person who's making comments. Like, actually do your research, look, learn. I think ignorance is the death of civilized life. Just and that's my problem again. This new government is trying to make you ignorant. We're intelligent. We used to be the hub of intelligence, and we're not even close. Because we have become ignorant, and ignorant is now the way to go. And I think that is very upsetting. But if you want to learn. Don't Wikipedia. Go to a library, get a book, take some courses in a college. Just I don't know, learn. I think the smarter you are, the better you are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if there's one thing that Star Wars has always taught, especially progressively as it's gone forward from like A New Hope to like the films that we have today and stuff, like it's very against intolerance. It always wants to be progressive.
Yeah.
And like again, like Nani was saying, and we're not saying that like you have to vote one way or the other, but like there is like one vision that like unites us all as a people, and like just try to like not segregate and just be a person that wants to bring people together. And like I don't think this episode was meant to be like a political campaign for anybody, but obviously we have reviews about some things, and especially because we think that the views that we have are based on some of the things that like Star Wars has spoken to us about. So that's it. I thought I wish that everyone finds this as interesting as like we found this discussion to be, because I really have found a lot of interesting things that I had never thought about based on what Mo and Nani were talking about. So, I hope that everyone that's listening, all 30 of you, find something as interesting as I did based on our discussion tonight. So I don't know. Nani, do you want to sign us off?
Guys, I know political subjects are a hard subject to do.
It's fine. It'll only be 4 years until the next one.
Only be 4 years until the next. We will try our best to, I don't know, just say our views, really, and you can accept them or not. You can comment.
You do the same.
Yes. Comment. That's the whole point. So we can say our views. You can have your views. You can
But
comment.
Always be respectful.
Yes, obviously. Always be respectful. Don't hate. God, I hate haters. I think we were pretty good on, saying our views in a respectful way and, keeping it civil. Guys, don't hate.
Appreciate.
Yes, appreciate. No, and try to, honestly, I think the problem is that it's too much of an attitude of trying to find what's wrong with somebody else and try to finding what's similar with somebody else.
Yeah.
And maybe trying to find a common ground. So if you maybe have somebody that you're not getting along with, but maybe you can try and find a common ground, who knows? That could start a conversation. So try that. But regardless, if you disagree with us, leave a comment. Follow us on Twitter, like, subscribe, YouTube, share, leave us a review, and comment as well. This is an important subject.
Unless you're a spammer for porn. Some of those. Don't be that person.
Don't comment.
Don't be that person.
Maybe DM us for that, but do not comment for that.
Well, for all you guys that actually still listen to us, we've made it past episode 7. I think we're gonna last. So, yeah.
Infinity and Beyond.
Come on. No, to Infinity and Beyond. Let's go, Toy Story.
It's like live long and prosper.
Wow, and now you Star Trek into our Star Wars. Okay.
It's fine. Hey, all nerd
media. We are inclusive.
We don't need to hate on the other. I love Star Trek too. Okay?
It's okay.
It's okay.
There you go.
But some of them hate.
I haven't seen it. But then again, I haven't seen it. I'm a hermit.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good night.
Thank you.
Love you, boys.
Pretty sure I said that in the wrong order.